It's been a number of years since they were spoken, but I have never forgotten the words of a friend spoken at a time when I was hell bent to fight one of my life's major crises. You have a flame burning inside you, he told me. Don't let what has happened put out that flame. His words pulled me up short, gave me pause, and quite literally changed the direction of my life. Now, years later, I have been invited by another friend to offer a series of reflections, few of which I would have had I not followed my earlier friend's admonition about the flame inside me. Reflections on the scriptures offered to us in the weekly Catholic liturgy. And it cannot be just happenstance that I take up this charge on the day that the liturgy presents us with these words from Paul's instructions to his young disciple Timothy. For this reason, I remind you to stir into flame the gift of God bestowed when my hands were laid on you. The Spirit God has given to us is no cowardly spirit, but rather one that makes us strong, loving, and wise. Those two messages continue to inspire me to stir into flame that God-given gift with the prayer that my words, but most of all God's, might stir up some light and warmth in you. These words of Paul were written in his old age, likely when he was imprisoned. He certainly had known many trials and persecutions during his years of proclaiming the gospel, but who of us has not known at least some measure of discomfort or worse in our efforts to live the gospel faithfully and bear witness to it in our daily lives? We may even have had occasion to make our own the anguished words of the prophet Habakkuk that began our scripture readings today. How long, O Lord? I cry for help, but you do not listen. Why do you let me see ruin? Why must I look at misery? God's response is repeated often in sacred scripture, often because most, if not all of us, need to hear it often. As Paul states it for Timothy's benefit and ours, bear your share of the hardship for the gospel with the strength that comes from God. Do you hear the note of perseverance in his words? Be faithful to God, for God is even more faithful to you. And that gives us an insight into what the apostles are really saying when they ask the Lord, increase our faith. They're not asking Jesus to produce a theology podcast that they can listen to as they travel the roads. Nor are they thinking that they should start memorizing the catechism. Rather, the faith that Jesus is calling forth from them is their response to him, Jesus, a response built on a relationship that has far more to do with the heart than it does with the head. To limit faith to an intellectual understanding of various beliefs is to rob it of its essence, and that essence is trust. It is quite possible to study and learn a great deal about the faith, and yet not really have the faith that Jesus calls us to. His kind of faith demands persevering in trust, and that comes from the heart, not the head. It is this faith trust that enables us to keep doing, like the servants in the parable, what we are obliged to do. And what is it we are obliged to do? It is what our baptism initiated us into, not a private club of the saved, but rather a fellowship of servant disciples trying in whatever way we can to make the reign of God a bit more real in our lives and the lives of those around us. And what is it that makes it possible for us to take up that challenge day after day, whether convenience or inconvenience? It is our trust and confidence that our God is near us, even when God seems so far away, that God will give us the strength we need to be faithful. Here's what that looks like in one person's life. The college's admissions committee was reviewing applications from high school seniors for the new freshman class. They plowed through hundreds of student essays on why the writer should be admitted to the school. Their eyes glazed over as they read essay after essay on the promise and potential of all these future presidents, rocket scientists, doctors, and lawyers. But one applicant's essay caught the committee's attention for its surprising lack of pretense. The student's essay read in part, "I am not a great student, nor am I a leader. You could say that I am incredibly average. I work very hard for the grades I get. For the past 3 summers, I have worked at a camp for children with cancer. At first, I was terrified that I would say something or do something that would add to their pain. But I was surprised at how much I enjoyed working with these kids. I've been even more surprised at everything I have learned from them about life and death, about coping with illness and disappointment, about what is really important and good. I would like to work with chronically ill and physically challenged children. I would like to pursue a degree in education and psychology so that I might try to give these boys and girls something of what they have given me." That student's application was immediately put in the admit pile. The committee felt that they had enough presidents and Nobel laureates to choose from. They wanted to make sure they had room for one good, dedicated teacher. Perseverance and humility. What the admissions committee sees in this student's essay, Jesus exalts in today's gospel. The gift of faith given to us in baptism is like a mustard seed, not, by the way, the smallest of all seeds, nor is its plant the biggest of all trees. Obviously, Jesus had never seen our redwood forests. But as with any seed, faith does require attention, nurturance, and perseverance if it is to reach its potential. That does not mean that with such a faith, Christian life will be free of all hardship and difficulty. Being a Christian, taking the gospel seriously, is never going to be a tea party. God has promised his loving care, but has never promised a life free of pain, difficulties, suffering, or even sudden and violent death. Let us not forget that he did not spare his own son. What God does promise is that with a growing faith and trust in him, we can endure pain and difficulties, that we can even accept suffering if and when it comes, for the sake of making the message of Jesus a reality in our world. Jesus goes on to compare the Christian disciple with the servant of his own time. When the servant comes back from working hard in the fields all day, his master does not say, "Oh, come in, you must be tired. Sit down, have your dinner, put up your feet, and watch TV." No, he is much more likely to be told, "It's about time you got back. I'm hungry. Hurry up and get my dinner ready. Then you can have some time for yourself." Our relationship with God is not about giving and getting in return. I give God so much and I can expect so much from God in return. No, our relationship is one of total and unconditional love and service. The joy and satisfaction is not in what we can do to squeeze favors from God, but in what we can give and share of ourselves. In a true love relationship, one does not say, "Well, dear, I have loved you for 3 hours. Now it is your turn to love me back for 3 hours." If the loved one gets sick, one does not say, "Well, I'll stop loving you now because you cannot give me anything. When you get out of the hospital and can do things for me, then I will begin loving again." In a true loving relationship, whether it be with God or another person, the joy and satisfaction is in unconditional giving and sharing. Of course, in such a relationship, we do not have to worry. Our love will be returned, often on a much richer level than what we have offered. But our emphasis is on the unconditional giving, on the happiness of the other person. In the words of an old song, "I want to be happy, but I won't be happy till I make you happy too." So perhaps it is time for us to stop thinking of our religion as something which entitles us to get things from God, as if somehow God is indebted to us for our being Christians. It's time to stop our supermarket approach, where the church is a place where I get things I need. Then I find myself saying, "I don't get anything out of going to church or to Mass." That sounds like the elder son in the story of the prodigal. Remember? "I have served you faithfully. I have not done anything to offend you, but you never gave me a party or killed the fatted calf so that I could celebrate with my friends." Let us instead hear again Paul's words to Timothy. "I remind you to stir into flame the gift of God bestowed when my hands were laid on you." The spirit God has given to us is no cowardly spirit, but rather one that makes us strong, loving, and wise. Or, in the words of Francis of Assisi, whose feast we celebrate this week, "You may be the only gospel a person will ever read."